Welcome back to Man vs. Meeple, the show where we talk about all things board game related. Today we have a preview of a very special game. This one's coming from Stefan Feld and Queen Games. It's his next big one, Merlin. This is also co-designed by Michael Rennick.
Yeah, he did Cuba and Pillars of the Earth, and anytime you have a Stefan Feld game, it's an event. That's why we're covering it, because Stefan Feld is a huge draw for a number of people. We love his games. I know you are a huge fan of his work.
Absolutely. Some of his games are some of my favorites for sure, and this one I've been looking forward to ever. We didn't hear about it too much sooner than Gen Con, so it was great to get a hold of it.
So this is a prototype of the game. A lot of the components are very rough, although I think the artwork and the style and the basic shape of all the components is pretty much done at this point, right?
Yeah, I believe it'll look mostly like this. There are some sketches around the board that are going to be finished up, but it must be said, this is probably one of the prettier looking Stefan Feld games. Again, no offense to old Stefan Feld games, but a lot of those are drier looking Euros anyway. This one's got a lot more color, kind of like Oracle of Delphi did, which is nice to see.
And for you guys that are fans of Feld, this one falls somewhere in between maybe an like the Oracle of Delphi and Bora Bora in its weight and how difficult it is to actually play.
Definitely approaches that.
Not super difficult, but there are a lot of intermingled components in the way that you move and the way places interact with one another. It's a little bit of a learning curve going on there, but we're going to talk about the components, try as best as we can to slow down our speech pattern so that we can get everything in. There's a lot of stuff in this game. So the whole idea in the game is that you are a knight in Arthurian legend and you're moving around the round table in order to enact very specific placements upon the board to do actions. Each of the players is going to have a player board in front of them. That player board's going to have a number of different things on it. You have 4 henchmen. Each of these henchmen represent a very specific action that you can take on your turn, whether it's gathering construction material, getting shields, getting flags to place on the side of your player board, or to put influence into one of the 6 different principalities in the game, which are these different areas upon the board. Also, each player is going to have 3 colored dice to their player color, and then 1 Merlin dice. That Merlin dice will be used to move Merlin around the board as well.
Exactly. That round table in the center represents a rondel. It's a rondel, effectively, that you're going to use your colored dice to move your knight around, and you're going to use your white dice, as Jeremy said, to move Merlin around, which is interesting because everyone gets a white die. So Merlin's going to be moving around in all sorts of different directions. Your knights move clockwise. Merlin can move both counterclockwise and clockwise. So part of it's kind of cool looking at those dice around the table at the beginning of a round to see, well, I need Merlin here. Oh, Jeremy might go first, and that might set me up. So a lot of really cool combos to be had.
Your player board's going to house a couple other different things across the top. It's going to house possible traitors. These are flagmen that will come and try to hurt you every other round. So you're going to want to put shields in those locations. You're also going to have a space for Merlin staffs.
Yeah, you have 3 of those.
You have 3 of these to start off. They'll allow you to use abilities or to use specific areas on the board twice. And then you're going to have apples. These apples will allow you to manipulate dice.
Yes, then they allow you to manipulate them well. These are not like the workers where you can move a die up 1 or down 1. This is use an apple and place the die on any side you want.
Okay. The board. You have the round table, as we mentioned. Each of the different sections up on the board, principalities, are broken into different areas. Each of these areas houses a different type of faction. It houses a unique shield, unique construction materials, and unique flags. It also is a place to place all of your influence upon the board. They also have tents in each of these locations that will house one very specific type of henchman that you have. It can only occupy 1 henchman at a time, so if you place your henchman in here, another player can come in here, but it will push your henchman back to your player board.
Right, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but when it comes into scoring at the end of every other round, you'll see how that comes into play.
Right. Over here, you have the environs, which is another board that's off to the side. It's a variable setup. You have a bunch of different tiles that are in here, whether they be mountain tiles or forest tiles or lake tiles, and then you have these 2 scroll ends that will push up against the side. These are areas where you'll be building castles in order to get area of control effects throughout the course of the game.
Exactly. If you haven't been able to tell so far, there's points over here, there's points over there, and there's points everywhere in this thing. So if you're wanting a point salad game, you're going to get one.
Right. You also have mission cards. Each player will have 4 mission cards at the start of the game. Anytime you fulfill a mission, you will get a new mission from the stack. These missions, when you look at them, they tell you various things you'll need to do up on the board, whether it's have influence in a very specific area, have a particular type of flag, and so forth, and also tell you a number of victory points that it will give you, either 1 through 3 total victory points. Also note, there is a icon on the bottom. We'll get to that because that's for a special rule at the end. It's kind of a variable that you can add into the game.
And what's interesting to note about these mission cards too is you're not handing anything in this game. Not at that point anyway. When you complete a mission, you just have to basically achieve what is on the card, prove that you have it, hand in the mission card, grab your points.
Right. Around the board, also, you have a scoring track. This is a point salad game, as you mentioned. Person with the most points at the end of 6 rounds will be the winner. Right, to start, what you'll have is each player will have one of these small boards. It will give you a variety of different things that you'll start the game with. One, it'll tell you which principality you will start your character in. So I'm going to start mine in the orange area. Each of these has their own very particular area that you can start in. Also, it'll tell you what kind of flag you're going to start with, what kind of shield you're going to start with, what kind of construction material, and then where you're going to place one of your influence.
Right, so it gives each player a variety of things. No one's ever going to be stacked up on one color, so it basically kind of sets an even playing field for all the players to start off with. You'll see, if we can go into this much detail, how each and every one of those things comes into play, but it's a nice way to variably set things up.
Right. A couple other things. You're going to start with 1 apple. Each player will start with 1 apple. You'll start with 4 missions, as we mentioned. 3 traders that are randomly drawn from the trader stack that will be placed onto your player board. And then you have on the player board, or on the main board itself, you have Merlin, who will start in the black space, and then you have Excalibur and the Holy Grail.
Right.
These are 2 locations that you can go to gather these. When you gather them, they will be placed in front of you, but you don't particularly keep those for the entire game. You'll use them until another player lands on those. We'll get into what those do in a little bit later. All right. Now we're starting the game.
Yes, so what do you do on your turn? So at the very beginning of the game, everyone's basically going to collect all 4 of their dice, roll them up, put them on their board, and get ready to go. It should be noted, if you roll triples of any number, you have to re-roll, and you have to re-roll all of your dice. So I did not, and you've rolled these dice, and you simply choose what dice you're going to use. This is where the game becomes very simple. There's a lot of complexity in most Stefan Feld games with what you can do. But what you are doing is often very simple. So you're taking one of your dice, you're going to put it in the middle, and you're simply going to move, in this case, my knight, 3 spaces clockwise around the round table. Then you will enact the action that is in that space. And there's no way we could possibly go into each and every one of these actions. This is where the real meat of learning this game is. But all of these actions will do a wide variety of things, from letting you trade resources, letting you gather more resources, using those resources to convert to points, so on and so forth. Basically, this is sort of all of the engine pieces that you need in order to get your point engines going.
What I will say about the rondel itself, between every unique location or principality, there are 4 steps. Each of these steps represent a very particular principality. So I'm pointing to blue right now. When you land on blue, we'll talk about this because this is a very important portion. Each of these 3 tan locations are just a variety of different things that you can do. Let's talk about the colored locations, because this is very important to the actual gameplay. When you land on one of these colored locations, you are then allowed to take one of your henchmen and do something with them at that place. There's 4 different henchmen that you have. When you take a henchman, you will place it on one of these locations depending upon what kind of henchman it can hold. If you place your construction henchman, you simply take one of that colored construction, put it onto your board. These construction pieces are used on the tan locations in order to build out in this location and place castles. These castles will give you a variety of different things, one of them being resources right then, but also area control through the course of the game, which will give you victory points. Second thing you can do is you can place a shield bearer. If you place a shield bearer, you will get to take one of those shields and place them on your board.
The next 2 things are the flagman and I don't know the woman.
The influence.
The woman who gathers influence for you. So when you place a flagman, just like the shields, you simply take one of the flags and add it to the side of your board. On the side of the player board, there are space for these flags. Should be noted, with shields and flags, you can collect multiples of these, so you can stack them. for a couple reasons. If you noticed, I actually have 2 traders that are stacked here.
Yeah.
So I'm going to need 2 shields to defend against that unless I use some other power to do so.
Right.
Same thing with the flags. The flags offer a wide variety of powers that you can use on your turn.
Yep.
And you could stack some of those in order to, if you really want to utilize or abuse that power. There are also some other ways of scoring points by having lots of flags on the board.
Right.
The Influence Woman allows you to simply take one of your influence tokens and place it in that space.
Yeah. Now, there's a lot of different things on the board, too, that will allow you to manipulate things. For instance, it'll allow you to move characters from one principality to an adjacent principality. It'll allow you to place influence where you don't have one of your ladies there. So all these other actions will allow you to kind of manipulate those in unique ways that you can't do from just landing on that principality itself. So, flags. Let's talk about flags as well. These flags that go on the side of your board, they all give you unique actions.
Yeah.
So if you want to, and you really want to kind of change gameplay again, you can trade these in. Each of these 6 colored flags does something very unique. One of them allows you to flip your die from one side to another, so you have dice manipulation. One of them allow you to trade 2 missions in at the same time, but get 2 extra victory points when you do them. One of them allows you just to kill a whole stack of traders if you have them. So there's a lot of variety.
Which can be nice.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of different ways in order to manipulate the dice in the game and the actions that you're taking.
Yeah, they're basically rule breakers.
Yep.
You know, and any good game like this needs that, and the flags in this game serve that purpose for sure.
Right. Again, as David alluded to, anytime you use a Merlin die, you can move Merlin in a unique way, either forward or backwards, which gives you a lot of flexibility. Plus, Merlin has the option of using a staff in order to take that action that you went to twice, which is fantastic.
Right, it can set up for some very big and powerful moves, particularly if you've built a resource engine where you've collected a lot of flags. You move Merlin to the space where you're able to score points for your flags, and then double that with a Merlin staff.
Right. So players are going to use their dice, all 4 of them, one at a time around the table until all players have placed all of their dice. When that happens, the round ends. Now, scoring rounds will only happen in the 2nd, 4th, and 6th round of the game. So at the end of a round, you're simply going to pick your dice up and re-roll. Right. Until you get to a scoring round. Let's talk about scoring rounds, because this is really the meat of how you get your points.
Yeah, to begin a scoring round, and this is the first one is going to be after round 2. The first thing you do is you have to deal with the traders.
Yep.
Hopefully, you've collected some shields.
Yep.
If you haven't, you're going to lose some points.
Yeah.
The traders basically represent penalties in the game, so each trader is a -3. Now, for every trader you have, if you have a shield, you're able to defend them. When you do, you discard the trader, you discard the shield. You avoid the penalties.
That's right.
One other thing that should be noted on the traders is if you've collected Excalibur, that allows you to kill a trader as soon as you collect it. It also allows you to have 3 extra bonus points if you're able to successfully defend all of your traders and you have Excalibur in your possession.
Yep.
So that's the first thing you do during the scoring round is the traders. The second thing is you're going to move on to the environs.
Right. So, and in the environs, you're going to look at area control. When you look at these areas, they're going to be broken up by different regions. So, for instance, here we have 2 forests that are connected to one another, but here we only have 1 river area. What you're going to look at is how many areas that you control. And that's how many victory points you get if you control that area. So this is a 2 area, you get 2 victory points.
Right, and you only need to have the majority of your structures in that area.
Yep.
The important thing about the environs at the very beginning of the game is you want to take a look at this thing because it's variably set up like Jeremy said, and as you can see right here, there's a lot of 1s and 2s, but we've got a big 5-point green area here in the center. So if you're the only one in there, that's 5 points at the end of the 2nd and the 4th round if you maintain control there.
And if you don't maintain control, it's simply divided by the number of players rounded down. Once you score that, you then go on to influence.
Right. Influence is where you're going to look at all the principalities. So you're going to go around the board and check basically area majority for each principality. Whoever has the most scores points equal to the number of influence tokens that are in that principality. Yeah. That sounds like a complicated math, but you're simply going to look at all the influence tokens. Those are the points for that principality. Yeah. Whoever has the most gets those points.
Regardless of color. So if you have 10 of them in there, whether they're your color or another player's color, that area is going to score 10 victory points. If you have the most for someone, then what happens is in that region, everybody that's in there is going to go down to just 1 influence at the end of the round. So everyone's going to pick up all the influence they have, put them back on their board, and it'll reset for the next round.
And the other thing to note in the influence is the Holy Grail. So the Holy Grail is a bit of a tiebreaker for influence. It can only be used if you are tied in the area. It basically serves as a one-time use extra influence. So as Jeremy said, if there's 10 points here and he and I are tied, he might want to use the Holy Grail there. He grabs those 10 points. And he also gets to keep the Grail until someone takes it in a future round.
Yep, and then players are going to score for their henchmen. You get 1 victory point for every henchman that's on the board and not on your player board.
Right, and this is where that sort of bumping and grinding comes in. If you have henchmen here, there's some reason to maybe consider taking those spaces from your opponents just to get them off the board for those points.
Right, now remember, that's when you typically score your points, but you can also score your points anytime on your turn by trading in mission cards. Anytime you turn in a mission card, you have to make sure that you have that. For instance, this one requires 4 influence anywhere on the board, which would give me 3 victory points. I turn this in, get 3 victory points, and take 1 of the face-up ones or 1 from the top of the deck. So you can also score victory points throughout the game by completing missions.
Yeah, and just like any good point salad, there's a few different routes to those points. Like Jeremy just said, there are points to be scored not only on the mission cards, but around this rondel. There are areas to score points during the game, so to speak. And then there's those scoring rounds. So if you've gone heavy here in the environs and in influence, that's probably where you're going to be scoring a lot of your points because you haven't been spending your turns setting up those other points.
Yeah, I think we've done a pretty good job explaining the game.
I agree.
There is a variable way to play the game as well, and that is with these player boards that you see here. There's 4 different locations that are columns, basically. And what they do is when you complete a mission, you have the option of either getting the victory points or looking at the bottom left corner, in this case it's a flag bearer, and taking one of your markers, depending upon how many points it would give you, and finding that flag bearer on here. Then you can cover that location with a token, meaning that you will get a special ability through the course of the game. So basically what you're doing is you're giving up your victory points, but instead getting a special ability that lasts for the entire game.
Exactly, and some of these things can, if you get them early enough, you're able to set up far more points than you would have scored on that card. There are some somewhat powerful powers on this card, and there are some very powerful powers on this card. So using this game, I think once you've played this game once, you'd want to try to use that player board. It does add a fair amount to the game, to a game that already has a lot going on, but once you've got this down, it really, like most stuff on Feld games, it's easy to play.
It's pretty quick. We played one of our games in an hour and a half. It's, like we said, it's 6 rounds. Player with the most victory points at the end wins. So, if you guys are interested in Merlin, go check it out on the Kickstarter page. It's coming from Queen Games. If you guys have any questions about the games, I think we've played it enough times now to answer them for you. Please, as always, subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and everything else that we do here at Man vs. Meeple. And we'll catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.
Season 2 of Man vs. Meeple is sponsored in part by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com.